Hello and welcome. I'm the Big Shot Critic, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, the Dollar Sportsman.
Hey
Now,
guys.
for those of you coming from his channel, I am a movie channel. We do basically a lot of fun videos about movies and also the reviews, which are pretty deep dives into what makes the movies function or not function, according to me. Care to introduce your channel for my viewers, Dollar Sportsman?
Yeah, I cover outdoors, mostly shooting sports. I am a firearms instructor, and I just love inspiring people to get out and have fun without having to spend an arm and a leg in their firstborn to do it. So that's what I do.
Great. And also the Dollar Sportsman and I grew up in the same town. We went to the same church. We were neighbors. Some went to some of the same schools. Did a fair
Yes,
amount
we
of
did,
outdoor
man.
activities together. Yeah. What
Yeah,
was that?
I've known this guy for a very long time,
Very
since
long,
the dawn of time.
very long time. And be sure to check out his channel. It's the Dollar Sportsman. Now, the reason he has agreed to come on my channel I've prepared some clips from movies featuring firearms, and the Dollar Sportsman is here to judge the accuracy of these sequences.
Oh, I'm so excited.
He has not he has not seen these clips. This will be his first time seeing them. I didn't even tell him what movies they're from. The only promise I make is that they're not ultra violent or anything. There's no blood in these scenes. It's mainly featuring gun handling.
Awesome.
Looks like first up, excuse me. Okay,
All right,
first
there it
up.
goes.
Oh dear. Okay. This is a clip from Clear and Present Danger, 1994. That's Willem Dafoe on screen. You'll see Harrison Ford. Anyway, I'm going to play the clip. My audio won't be good for it. And afterwards, Dollar Sportsman can take it away. So we're going to go ahead and leave Harrison Ford hanging there because that's all the gun action.
Awesome. I love Harrison Ford. He was a great actor. So is William Dafoe, for that matter.
Now I'm going to leave
So,
it on screen so I can scrub to any points of interest you want to see again.
okay, first thing, when the guy comes running up to shoot at Harrison Ford as he's running for the helicopter, he's shooting from the hip. You notice that?
I did notice that.
So, shooting from the hip is not a skill that comes naturally to anybody. You can practice a great deal and you can eventually get good at it. That's valid. But for most gangsters, like this guy, or mafia or whatever he was, that's going to be one of the most inaccurate ways, especially with a full auto gun, to hit anything. So that probably explains why he survived running in front of a firearm right then and there.
So context, this is a drug cartel operation. This guy's probably private security for that facility that belongs to a cartel.
Awesome. Yeah, well, his firearms handling sucks. So there's that. Next is when he's being dragged into the helicopter. Guy pops out and tries to shoot at him again with a fully auto something. It looks like some sort of Uzi, right? So he's coming out of the roof. He's got the gun and he starts to shoot. And he's probably, I don't know, 40-ish yards away from that helicopter. So realistically, from that distance, trying to shoot two-handed looking down a sight like this, there's no way he was even going to hit that helicopter, much less several shots right along the line in the back.
Really, even at 40 meters?
Uh-uh. No, because unless you are very steady and you have a good solid grip and a target that's not moving, it's very difficult to control those in the first place. And judging by the bullet holes, I'd say maybe that was a 45 caliber. And that is not easy to control at all unless you have one that's heavily modded. So he's doing this, trying to shoot the helicopter, and he probably would have got, I don't know, 3 or 4 bullets on the copter itself, but certainly not in that line perfectly strewn behind him.
So the grouping you're saying is unrealistic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then the sniper shows up from the helicopter, right?
Topaz, yes.
Yeah, he gets around.
Now, context.
He's about to shoot.
This guy is a highly trained Army sniper or Marine sniper or something.
So he's using iron sights, and if he's in the Marines, then he knows how to use iron sights really well, right? So that's the most believable part of this whole video. Now, he's still rocking. He's in a helicopter that's moving. You can see the gun move around a little bit when he's actually shooting, right?
Uh-huh.
And if it wasn't for the fact that the gun was moving around, then I would say, okay, I can understand this scene. The fact that it was moving a little bit, it looks like he probably wouldn't have shot as accurately as he was going to, but it's pretty close. And especially knowing the accuracy standards for the Marines, he would have been decent with those iron sights.
Okay, the movie did make a point earlier to show that this guy is like a ridiculous sniper. Very, 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 very skilled.
Well, he was the most believable out of the 3, so that's good.
All
that's
right,
awesome.
That's clear and present danger. Any final words?
No, I love Harrison Ford. Great actor.
Good movie, by the way. 1994, like I said. It's the third Tom Clancy adaptation.
Awesome.
To come out of Hollywood. Okay, next up is an old timer. This is James Bond. Dr. No, 1962. No special context to pay attention to. I'll just let it go. And this video comes in 2 parts. Something happens, then there's a conversation that I skipped, and I got another video. Here we go.
Awesome.
The bad guy coming up thinks there's someone in the bed. James Bond here is waiting.
Drop it, Professor, and behind you. It's funny, I thought you'd turn up sooner or later. Sit down.
So that's essentially the first part.
Okay. Now, the guns that they're using are suppressed, right?
Right.
And all you hear when those bullets hit the pillows is the pillows going kind of pop, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless those are 22 caliber subsonic rounds, suppressed firearms do make noise. They don't hurt your ears, and that's the whole point of a suppressor, is that it's designed to protect your hearing. It's not designed to be completely noiseless like they show in the movies. So every time he's shooting, realistically, that would have been a loud enough pop that anybody would have heard it in that vicinity or around. It just wouldn't have been loud enough to hurt your ears.
If it helps, later James Bond famously claims that the firearm used by this man, Professor Strangways, is a Smith & Wesson.
Does he say which one?
He does not.
Okay.
He does claim that a 6-round capacity.
6-round capacity. It's a pretty small firearm. I didn't catch exactly in his hand which one it was, but I doubt that it's going to be a 22.
Oh, there was a good shot of it there.
Yeah, that's definitely not a 22. That's probably going to be a 45, given that era, possibly a 9.
Okay.
Although 9mm at that time were, I don't even remember, honestly, if that was even a thing at that time or not. So there's that.
This takes place in Jamaica, and Strangway is a Brit.
Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
so part 2 of this, I'm going to remove this. Okay, so part 2, obviously, context for non-James Bond fans. James Bond uses the, oh wow, I'm just spacing it.
Walther PPK.
That's the one. Here we go.
Yep.
To use the information. And what keep up? Mr. Smith and Wesson. And you've had your 6.
Get him good, James.
Yeah, the Walther PPK is, well, I mean, I guess I can't tell exactly which caliber there, but it's a 380, I believe, judging by the frame size and whatnot. So that definitely would have been a lot louder. Now, James shooting at that distance, again, from down, instead of normally when you're holding a firearm and you're trying to engage a target, you would be up here.
Mm-hmm.
But he's shooting down here at that distance. I'm sure he could. It's James Bond.
It is James Bond. So I've heard different things. Is the 6-round capacity that he claims for the Smith & Wesson just absurd, or?
No, if that was a 45 cal, then that's reasonable depending on the frame size. I don't know which model.
So it's within the realm of
I would have to
possibility.
know. Yeah.
Okay. Any last words for that before we move on?
That's it, man.
Okay. You're more thorough than I expected.
That's good. All right, what you got?
Next up, this is from the movie Inception.
Ooh, one of my favorites.
You're probably familiar with the scene. All these people he kills are figments of someone's imagination. So anyway, here we go.
Oh man, I've talked about this scene several times because of this right here. Pew! Pew!
Okay. Sounds like you have things to say.
Pew, pew, pew. Pew, pew. So, for those of you who don't know how suppressors work, I know I already said it, but a suppressor does not actually suppress the sound of a gunshot. Not like that, anyway, where all you hear is this little pew. It's in all the movies, too. It's the exact same sound. If you'll notice, when you watch movies with suppressors, it's always that sound.
It is a little different in the 60s, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds super cool, right? It's supposed to be super slick, super stealthy, but reality is that any guard standing in that vicinity would have heard that. And they would have known exactly what it was.
Are we talking like within 50 yards, 100 yards?
I would say within 25 yards. Anybody in the vicinity of those buildings would have heard the firearm go off and they would have ran to help. So that's just the reality. And he's not using a 22. Now, the reason why I mentioned the 22 is because there are some instances where people have had 22s at a range and shooting subsonic, which means it's going below the speed of sound, that it can be exceptionally quiet, right? There are only a couple of calibers that I've ever heard actually successfully do that, and 22 is one of them. But 9 is not, especially coming out of a small pistol. So
and he's using a 9mm there?
Yeah, 9 or a 45. Those are the two most common calibers that you're going to see in movies.
Okay. Another question. This thing that he's doing, where he puts his hand, it seems to be to prevent his spent shells from shooting out and away. What would be the point of that? I can't decide.
The point is to protect from evidence, one, although he's just shooting people, so there's going to be that. And 2 is to prevent the sound of the shell falling to the ground and alerting guards nearby, which again,
it doesn't seem like he's catching the shells, just keeping them from flying away. He is catching.
He's got it in his right hand. He's reaching over the top. The shell ejects in that direction. So he's going boop and catching it and then going.
Okay. the evidence thing is kind of silly. Why he would even catch him in the first place? Maybe because of the sound. Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah, the sound makes more sense.
Because there's still going to be. It's not like somebody's going to walk past there afterwards and say, "Oh, well,
No.
definitely nobody was shot here except for all that blood on the floor."
And the dead guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Makes sense. Now, have you ever watched Jack Reacher?
Funny you should say that. One of those clips is coming
Oh!
up.
Did I call it? Did I call it or what?
I don't know if that's the very next one, but even if it isn't, it's going to be.
All right. Awesome.
All right. So that's Inception, 2010. Good Christopher Nolan movie. Oh, yes, it's the very next one.
Bam. Called it.
Okay.
Very cool. All right, let's do this.
Now, a little context for you folks before I hit play. Jack Reacher was directed by a guy named Chris McQuarrie. He claims his brother is a former SEAL or something like that, and or some close friend or something, and has been a firearm consultant on his movies. Here we go.
Awesome.
He just hung a target down range, and he's getting some practice shots, so this guy will talk to him.
Six inches right. That's your mulligan, Mr. Ward. Play ball. Let's go.
Cold bore shot.
Mm-hmm.
Notice he's not wearing any eye protection either. Notice how he caught the brass there?
Yeah. Next shot he takes, it sort of does this editorial thing where there's two different shooters, so we'll skip over that.
Cool. So is that the end of the clip?
That is the end of the clip.
Okay. So the first shot he takes, way over to the right, right? Now that's not likely just a cold bore thing, but cold bore is the first shot that you take out of a rifle at a range like that. Normally, it's not going to hit exactly where you want it to because the bore or the inside of the barrel is cold, and that can affect the shots. So it kind of makes sense that he would have missed. Probably not by that much, though. That was a pretty significant miss. So
even at that distance?
What is that, 100 yards?
At least. I don't know. It's the great... they mentioned it in the movie. I think it's 100 yards. It's a rare distance for a range to have.
That's definitely not a rare distance. Although it is true that in shows, they will exaggerate that to say that that's a really hard shot to make. 100 yards is a standard distance. That is the standard distance that you sight in at. So it's unless you're shooting 22, which in that case you would do 25 or 50 yards. But 100 yards for a hunting rifle like what he has is very standard for zeroing. Right?
I could be wrong. I mean, in the movie they might claim more than that, just to be clear.
Even if it's 200, I vaguely remember the movie mentioning 200. That's still not a very difficult shot to make for an experienced shooter, at least. So the group that he makes there at the end, it's about this big, right? So you've got three shots kind of in a triangle.
After the cold bore, yeah.
Yeah. So that's about a 2.5 to 3 inch group, which at 100 yards is a horrible group. And the guy sitting behind him would have laughed him to smithereens and walked off.
For context, for added context, I've read actually 2 and most of 3 of the Jack Reacher novels. He's supposed to be a legendary marksman, like incredible marksman.
Yeah. And
he's supposed to be the only Army person who has ever won the Marine Sniper contest or whatever that thing is.
Yeah, so that group sucked. Just sorry, Jack. Just wasn't that great. At 100 yards, at 200 yards, you're starting to get a little bit more. But if he's that good of a marksman at 200 yards, he's still going to make a group at most 1.5 to 2 inches, right? And that would be considered MOA, which is minute of angle, which is just an inch at 100 yards, right? So an MOA group is 1 inch at 100 yards, 2 inches at 200, etc., more or less, without getting into the nitty gritty behind that. But yeah, so that group was horrible. However, the way that he caught the bullet, the casing as it came out, that is something that is a little more from the perspective of trying to prevent evidence from being somewhere. And in another scene in this movie, he shows the bad guy sniper supposedly inside a van as he's looking out and he's taking his shots. And the reason why is because all of his casings are going into the van instead of out on the street.
Yeah.
So I can understand that, right? Now, the fact that he has both eyes open is another thing that is realistic to snipers. Now, if you are in that sort of military circumstance or law enforcement or what have you, you want to have situational awareness as to what's going on your side, right? So his left eye is open so that he can still scan and see what's going on out here as well as what's happening in the scope. So that makes sense.
Okay. How about the thing where starting out, he rolls from his back?
That's just ridiculous. That was
Really?
Cool camera making.
Okay, just fun for the movies.
Fun for the movies. That's all it was. Because any self-respecting sniper is not going to lay there on his back first, looking down the scope, and then roll to his front.
Okay.
It's just not going to happen.
Well, you got to make some compromises for the audience, I guess.
Exactly. It's got to look cool, right? Let's put a roll in there. Boo! That's it.
Are you ready for the last clip I have?
Yes, let's bring it on.
Okay. This one is from 1993, another Harrison Ford movie, The Fugitive.
Sweet. Ooh, that's a classic.
One of my
Love
favorites.
that movie.
Here goes.
Blue top coat, waving a gun and screaming. At a woman.
Stop that man! He's a U.S. Marshal! Let him go! He's a U.S. Marshal! Let him go! Let him go! Close the gate! Go! Lock it down! Hold it!
That's basically the gist of it.
So when he is running and he's got his gun up and he's running and he racks the gun, right? Cocks
Yeah.
it.
There it is.
So if he was law enforcement, I can almost guarantee you that unless you live in Israel, and I'll explain that in a second, that he would have already had a bullet inside chamber, right? Yeah, exactly. Law enforcement is trained to carry with one in the chamber unless the military in Israel has a different way of drawing. What they do is they draw, they come up, they grab the back of the gun and they rack as they come forward, and then they're ready to go. That's how they're trained to carry. But if you ask any firearms professional in America, they would tell you to carry with one in the chamber, especially if you're law enforcement. So that whole this running around trying to rack it and then running still several steps holding the gun like this is nonsense.
And of course, he's a U.S. Marshal, so he is U.S. law enforcement.
Yeah, so he's going to know better than to do that. Second thing, when he is shooting at the glass, that is pretty realistic. If he's a U.S. Marshal, he's going to be able to have some good accuracy on his target, right? However, the only question that I have is why didn't he shoot at Harrison's foot? Because it was right there. He could have shot his foot and then he wouldn't have been able to get away. I mean,
or at least wouldn't have been able to get away very quickly.
Yeah. go back to that and just play the scene where he's shooting again.
All right, here we go. That was the first shot.
Keep going. Okay, so he's looking down the sights. That's what I wanted to know. I was wondering if he was just kind of shooting or not. Now, it is true that there is reactive shooting. So when I teach basic pistol courses to people, I teach them all about the sights, how to focus on the front sight, blah, 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 all of that. But then when we start getting into movement, going back and forth or drawing to fire or what have you, when we get to faster paced shooting, then it's more of a stick it at the target and go and do your best, right? It's not as much time taking it to line up with his eyes and whatnot, but he does a very good job of showing it kind of in between. You can tell that his eyes maybe not be perfectly lined up on the first couple of shots, but right here it's looking pretty much straight down the barrel of the gun. So I would say that's pretty accurate, and he does a good job. Now, the only thing is that his thumbs are kind of laying over each other there.
Yeah.
They're still pointed in the right direction. So when you hold a firearm, you're going to have, or for right-handed people, you're going to put your fingers around the other. Your thumbs are going to be together. Let me get that in camera here. And then there's your trigger finger, right? So he's pretty much got the fingers going on his hands, but his thumbs are just kind of weirdly capped over each other. And that's something more newbies do. Whereas more experienced, they kind of come together and they put their thumbs flat like that. But that's a minor thing. And when you've been in law enforcement or military or what have you, it's quite often that you actually ride a whole lot higher on the gun than that, because the way he's holding it, there's not much recoil prevention on the actual barrel itself. But if you choke up on the gun, your support hand comes forward, you lock your wrist out like this so it's flat, and then the second thumb kind of sits on the slide itself. And that actually adds to your accuracy because it kind of prevents you from recoiling as much.
Okay.
And you would think that that would hurt your thumb. It doesn't at all. The slide goes right by it. You don't even feel it happening, but that adds to your control. But that's not something that we normally teach in basic course.
But something a U.S. Marshal ought to know.
Probably. However, this was filmed in the 90s.
Yeah.
And stuff has evolved since then. So it could be that that's just kind of how it was back in the day.
One question. As he was running, he had his gun up at a safety concern.
Yeah. From a safety perspective, that would make sense if he had it up, because he doesn't want to point it at somebody in the crowd.
Okay.
Because that's really bad.
As opposed to down.
You could have had it down too. The only problem with down is that you could accidentally send one into the ground in front of you, and then it could ricochet or what have you. So running with it up, and in fact, at some shooting ranges, they teach you to always point your barrel up if you have to move from station to station, like during a competition or what have you. And that's the reason, so that you don't accidentally stick one in your foot or someone else's foot.
Huh. Didn't know that. Oh,
yeah.
Also, so I heard there were 9 shots. He did 9 shots. Can you identify that gun?
Ooh.
I believe this character likes Glocks.
I can't identify it from this just because my screen is tiny and I'm having a hard time seeing it. Maybe go back to when he's running with it up in the air.
Let's see here.
Looks like a Glock from there.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. That looks like a Glock. So that would make sense.
In the sequel, he almost has a monologue regarding Glocks.
Which, you know what, guys? I understand a lot of people carry Glocks, but if you're only carrying a Glock because it's the cool thing to do, or because someone else you admire is carrying a Glock, then you're carrying it for the wrong reason. I'm sorry. You have got to find something that fits you well. And I'm just saying, SIG fits better. I said it. SIG fits better. But, you know, that's just me. John Lovell may
Is this
disagree, but that's all right.
last question regarding the Fugitive, the bulletproof glass? How's that responding to those bullets? What do you think of that? Is that accurate?
Generally speaking, you would see a little bit more damage around the site of the bullet hitting itself. You'd see a little bit more of a destructuring, I guess you could say, more of the breaking, because bulletproof glass is layered, right?
Yeah.
So it's got polymer layers, rubber layers, more polymer, some glass maybe, but usually that glass is a polymer base. And what happens when you hit it with something going as fast as a bullet is that it just kind of spiders out some of those layers, not all of it. And that's why the bullet doesn't come all the way through.
All right.
That's it.
And that caliber would maybe cause a little more damage but not go through?
It definitely wouldn't go through. Bulletproof glass is designed to take a lot more than that.
All right. So be sure to check out the Dollar Sportsman. As you can see, he's quite knowledgeable about his topic. And if you're from his channel and want to check out more fun videos about movies, drop on by Big Shot Critic. And
this has been fun, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate you coming up with this. I've never done a reaction video before, so that was awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more collaborations with other sort of people with their own topics that can cross over with movies.
Awesome.
So thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's been fun. I'll see you guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hasta la pasta.